This is the art of startup war. And my name is Brian McMahon, your host and sensei. Here is what we know. 98% of startups will fail every single day, and mostly due to reasons outside your control. The Expert Dojo Startup Accelerator, we look to even up the playing field by sitting down with the greatest minds in startup investment right here in our studio in Silicon Beach, where we look to shine a light on your path to success. Now, our guests each week have invested millions of dollars into startups and are the most respected investors in the world. Now, they share all they know with you, the listener. So join us on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, starting off your week winning the war against startup failure. Welcome back. It is another week. It is another amazing investor. Got a real treat for you this week. I'm going to talk to my good buddy, Alon Goren. Well, that's not the treat. That's the treat for me. But more importantly, for all of you out there, Alon is part of one of not just the most prestigious funds here in LA, but definitely one of the most active, which is Wavemaker. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
What's
Stoked to be
going
here.
on? We
everything.
do go back. Like a lot of the times I'm like, hey, we're really good friends. And we're kind of semi-friends, but we're good friends from the beginning, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when this place, when you first took over, like wires hanging from the ceilings.
It
and
hasn't
stuff
changed, right?
Not that much, actually, but you've been here a while.
Yeah, right. Nobody expected that. They're like, oh, Expert Dojo, that'll be in there for like 2 minutes.
I know, everyone's like going like, what happened here? Like the person who had the lease on this place must have felt bad for Brian, let him in, like, or he maybe broke a window and broke in or something, and
like
he
my
still
ancestors.
hasn't gotten kicked out yet. Exactly, you know.
But now, years later, here we are, still working with early stage startups.
Still killing it.
Yeah, and you were right there with me. It was funny. We had been parallel for years, just in the same space, caring about the early stage space. I really want to talk about Wavemaker. And I know because for everybody out there, knowing about Tim Draper is obviously a huge part of Wavemaker. But more importantly, it's just done hundreds of deals that everybody's going to want to get into your head with how do I fit? Do I fit? What kind of people do you look for?
Yes.
But just before we get there, and I also want to talk about the Crowd Invest Summit as well, because you host the largest investment conference in LA, maybe beyond. And I just, again, can't say enough good things about that. But before we get to any of that, can you just take us through a little bit through your journey, maybe through 805 startups and a few of the other things you were going through, and kind of why you care so much about this early stage startup, I'm so screwed, but I want to be rich stage.
Yeah, like the stage where we purposely punish ourselves for our whole lives.
Or maybe it's the I'm so screwed, I know I'm never going to be rich, but I want to be creative stage.
That may be a little more on point, but honestly, my background is I grew up in Southern California. My family had our own business growing up. I, from junior high age, would be working after school at my dad's shop that rebuilt auto parts. So I forgot. It might have been with you. No, with somebody else. I was just explaining the other day how when I would go to my parents, I barely ever heard no. But there was always a hurdle that had to be crossed. So I'd be like, I want a new bike. And my dad would be like, well, the recycling guy comes to the shop once a week. If you fill up a bucket with copper, he'll give you $50.
Nice.
So come in after school, come in on the weekends. I'll give you all the old parts. You'll basically sit there with like wire cutters and tools for 7 hours to fill up a bucket with, the copper from the inside of an alternator, and I'll give you $50.
The glamorous life.
The glamorous life. But I understood from an early age, if I wanted something, just work your ass off. And I also understood there was a correlation between how much effort you put in and how much money you made.
Right.
So I understood that. And then growing up, the next thing was punk rock. I was a Southern California kid obsessed with bands like Bad Religion growing up, and that was sort of my identity, like my full on. To this day, if you asked me like, what do you identify more as, like coming from Southern California, your parents being Israeli, being a startup person, venture, I would say punk rocker.
I don't know why I'm struggling to see this, but I suppose we all have a bit of punk rock in us. Like I loved punk rock back in the day.
Yeah.
I was more heavy metal, but I went through little phases of punk rock as well. I was kind of never mind and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
but yeah, growing up in that world, it was sort of like this fuck authority thing. There's all this sort of not just that, but it was like it's why I got into crowdfunding, right?
Is crypto the new punk rock?
I think that there's different reasons for it. I'm not like full on like anarchist, want to take things down kind of person, but I am the type of person that thinks that there's too many middlemen and that like if you and I want to do some kind of deal, we should be allowed to.
Right.
Like if I want to tell the world that I'm starting some company, there shouldn't be weird rules that stop me from just posting it on Facebook and having my friends and family participate.
Yeah, it's the
like,
betterment.
That's insane, right? And so like my whole thing when I was doing Invested In, my previous company was my favorite word to use in like decks and presentation stuff was disintermediation,
nice.
Which is super nerdy, but just a word that says cutting out the middleman.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to have to go through a bank to do something. I don't want to have to go through a regulatory body to do something. I want to be able to like I said, just deal directly with the person I want to deal with.
And it's lovely. I mean, 805 Startups is still going on. It's still
Yeah.
trucking ahead.
Oh, so
you're working with governments now, helping governments and startups work together, which I really like. I mean, there kind of is a little bit, there isn't a middleman, I suppose, because there's you making sure the government are directly engaged with the startup community.
Yeah, I mean, 805 Startups was a thing I started as an excuse to work from home. I just wanted to hang out with a bunch of nerds and not have to drive into Santa Monica every day because I live north of here in Thousand Oaks.
Yeah.
And so, but the
By the way,
greatest
these are major first world problems.
Oh, absolutely. Like, oh man, I don't want to commute.
I don't want to commute to a beach city where the sun always shines every day because that
like,
sucks.
74 degrees is a little warm.
Sometimes
it's cold.
In January.
In January, it's warm. In the summer, it's kind of cold. I'm just not used to having to wear pants. I like shorts and flip-flops.
But that's why we do startup, right? It's because we want to be able to make a choice. It's not that we work less hours, we work twice as many hours. Or it's not even that we earn more money. If we sucked up to somebody and got ourselves a nice boss just to be nice to every single day, we'd probably make more money. It's because we want to choose.
Oh, it's a choice thing. It's maybe some of us at various points in time aren't really employable, so we get into it as necessity. But honestly, I think it's just a bunch of people that are super passionate about what they're doing. And, I had this sort of revelation, like I was doing 805 Startups, which was a lot of fun. Thank God Gary came, who's a childhood friend, and sort of took it over. I still do it with him, and I'm still involved a lot, but he's sort of running the show. But I did 805 Startups. I did Crowd Invest Summit. We just announced today Crypto Invest Summit.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Crowd Invest Summit. So you went from 805 Startups, you started it off, you really galvanized and got startups. I mean, I know it was over the other side of the city at the beginning, but you then made it across LA and just gave startups a place that they could call home and a place that they could actually get together and build community, and now to build it with the governments. And then when we started getting really close and getting to know each other an awful lot better, you started talking about the Crowd Invest Summit. And I thought, okay, well, this is going to be good. You're going to have a couple of decent people will be there. You'll have a couple of the usual venture capitalists that we all bring. And then you'll bring a lot of startups, and then those startups will have a nice time. And it will be good, but not exceptional. And that was until you told us about your first speaker, which was off the charts for a first conference to come out with a huge name.
Who was that?
Shark Tank name.
Yeah.
Robbie. I call him Robbie now. Since your conference, we've become good friends.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we've spoken for at least 10 seconds. So I call him Robbie. But yeah, you got Hershevek, right?
Yeah,
from Shark
we
Tank.
got Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank to speak.
Which is no small feat. To bring him to a conference, to get him to talk. And what it does is it means the rest of the speakers are incredible. And you brought 2,000 people to the LA Convention Center in your first year in a conference, all focused not just on, hey, how do you get investment, but how do you actually use the crowd to get investment?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point of it all and the whole reason we got into crowdfunding was so that everyone can participate, so that the companies can basically have a fair shot, So wherever you are in the world and whatever stage you're at, and so that investors could have a fair shot. I wanted to know that, I could get as much access as some of the venture capitalists. And so that was the whole idea behind it. And so it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, but we built it up.
And you did. And I want to just stay on that word that you've used there for everybody who's listening. Like, our audience are early-ish stage startups who are wondering, how do we scale our business? And whether it's through investment or whether it's through something else, like, how do we bring our business up to the next level? And the word that you used was participate. So I'm not just saying to people here, hey, you should go to conferences like the Crowd Invest Summit, but you should do that. I'm saying you should participate. Now, participate means doing your homework before the conferences, understanding who the speakers are going to be, understanding who the people are going to be in the booths and who are going to be exhibiting, planning to meet people at the conferences, setting up back-to-back meetings all day, and then allocate 2 or 3 sessions that you want to watch as well to make sure that you're learning too. But really plan this out with military precision. And if you do there, you are in the heart of everything that's happening, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think that it's not as hard to be in the sort of inner circle as you make it out to be in your head. Just like it's not as hard to start your company as you make it out to be. It's not as hard to do any of the things you want. It's not as hard to invest as you think it is. Really, though, what you have to kind of get into the mentality of is doing and sort of getting shit done, because one thing begats the next. It's like the sort of BS, but it's real, like, thing that you've heard 1,000 times growing up. Like, it just takes the first couple steps to get up the mountain or whatever. Yeah. But really, you just start working and it becomes easier and easier and easier. And you show up to events, and by the 3rd or 4th event, the 4th time you see Brian, you know him, right? Yeah. And then you start to become a part of that crew.
Yeah.
And the thing that's awesome about Expert Dojo is that your doors are always open, and there's not that hard to sit here and then have guys like what's a regular, like a guy like Asher, who's a regular, who comes to like every event, right? He's a big angel investor. He makes a lot of investments. He's very active, participates, and he's a no bullshit guy where he'll give you real feedback. Like, I've seen him not rip people apart, but like ask questions that clearly the person was like felt a little bit offended, but like you need that. You need a little tough love. It's like having a football coach, a football coach that's real with you and makes you that doesn't fluff it up for you, right?
You're so right. Yeah. I'm beyond the time in my life I need people to say nice things to me. I'm now running out of time. I need people to tell me, Brian,
you're not
fix
that
this.
Old.
Yeah, but in startups. So here's what scares me the deeper I am in with startups. We had about 400 companies came through the dojo last year, and we want to bring a lot more than that through this year. Yeah, but I learn. The joy of my life is every company who comes through, I learn this little extra piece. And the culmination of everything that I'm taking in is that it's a race. Like, it's a huge race, especially at the beginning. And we fail because we run out of runway. Not really because of money, not really because of team or product. Because if you think about it, Amazon had 10 years. Yeah. So their runway was fine. They had plenty of time to do their team. But if we can make sure our runway is short by really focusing on the biz dev, really focus on seeing the right people, on getting the right information from them, we're going to get there quicker. So absolutely. I love that. What you're saying is absolutely true. It's the conferences that people go to. It's the places you go with intent. Don't arrive 20 minutes late, saunter in, stand on your own with a beer, listen to it and say, yeah, I participated. No, you friggin' didn't participate. Yeah. You just turned up late and you left early.
And you made a great point at the beginning. You don't just like show up, you could sit in the room where the speakers are going. And I would love that the room be full the whole time, right? There's 1,000 seats in the room. Some panels, it's really full. Some panels, there's 3/4 of the room full, right? That would be great for the room to be totally full. But as a person who wants to get something done and has intent, you'll probably make more deals in the hallway. And the way I set up the conference and hopefully made it, Joseph and I, Joseph's my partner on the conference, we always argue about this stuff, that we don't ever want a panel up on stage or a speaker up on stage where the information they give you could have easily been Google searched.
Yeah.
And sometimes the accounting panels and the legal panels can get like that. But I think that we bring the right people where there's a little more argument, there's a little more
I'm going to disagree with you. Every single thing I saw. I mean, like this year, last year even, I suppose just a couple of months ago, you brought the profit. I mean, the friggin' profit. Anybody who listens to, and again, what I loved about that guy is he's real.
Yeah.
He speaks about people. If you've got a problem with your business, it's your people, it's your process, or it's your inquiries that are coming through. So the people you're bringing in are seriously legit. Now, I am dying to see this coming year who you're going to bring in. I know you're going to have a huge slant on crypto as well, because cryptocurrency is actually becoming a huge part of our entire investment space. Now I'm thinking to myself, oh man, I got to bring in some crypto people so we can talk about what's happening in the crypto world as well. But what are we thinking? Give us a sneak preview. When is it going to be? And then we're going to talk about Wavemaker. But I want everybody listening to go to this conference in LA and ask for Alon, or I'll ask for me.
Absolutely. So we're actually just announced today that we're sort of co-hosting Crowd Invest Summit with Crypto Invest Summit.
Sweet.
So cryptoinvestsummit.io is the website. You'll see the first batch of speakers, and we got some of our regular people that we really like to have on stage, like Tim Draper and Adam Draper. We have Kathleen Brightman from Tezos. That's actually like a big one that has a lot of controversy right now.
Crazy.
We have NBA All-Star Baron Davis is going to be up on stage doing a fireside chat with Rob Vickery from Stage Ventures. And the reason why we're bringing him on stage is actually when Rob was first telling me that
he's a great guy.
That Baron is investing. Or investing in companies and participating in sort of this world, I actually found out that Baron Davis, and I don't know the specific numbers, and I might be a little off, but like the amount of money Baron Davis made investing in vitamin water, I think surpassed the amount of money he made his whole NBA career.
Wow.
He's also in the Angel.
He's same as Priceline, right? With Shatner.
Yeah.
I mean, Shatner made more from Priceline than Star Trek.
It's absurd. It's crazy, right? It's this. You don't think about that because you know how many millions of dollars they made a year doing what they do. But then he also was in the A round of Snapchat, and then you look at this dude and you go like, well, he's better at picking deals than most venture capitalists.
Yeah.
So we should take him seriously. Plus, as an athlete, I think they're really disciplined. There's a lot of really great qualities. So I want to hear what he has to say about it. Yeah. So it's going to be exciting to have him on stage.
That's what a great lineup. And you also bring up a really important point. Like most of our audience are startups, but actually they should be investors as well. I mean, we were talking before the podcast about early stage startup investing outperforming all markets last year.
Yeah.
Yes or no?
Yes. So early stage for the past, if you look at data, I'll try and find some to share and post online so you guys can check something more recent that I post. But if you look at data, early stage venture outperforms later stage pretty much across the board, across all years for the past, I think, 15, 20 years. And then on top of that, if you go B2B early stage, you go even higher. So, if you're thinking about investing in funds, actually look at the few local funds that do B2B startups and early stage. That's the way to go, in my opinion.
So
but
speaking
for
of
everyone
Wavemaker,
participating, before I ever considered myself an investor, I was investing in a lot of the companies that came through our crowdfunding sites and stuff. Like $500 here, $1,000 there, just so that I could practice what I preach.
Yeah. But so look, everybody around, the people I'm bringing in here are great human beings as well as great investors. So people like Alon, they're out there to serve the entire startup community. So I appreciate it, mate. Hey, let's take it on to Wavemaker. Let's talk, because what an epic fund to be a part of. One of the most prolific funds in the world, right?
Oh, yeah. So in LA, Wavemaker Partners is the most active venture fund. In terms of number of deals, by far.
How many deals is that?
In the last few years, they've done 250 investments.
That is insane.
That is insane when you look at... I didn't realize, because I'd been friends with them for a long time, and when you're a startup, you don't totally appreciate this. Yeah. But most venture funds make 6, 10 deals a year. And the ones that make 10 deals a year are the more active ones. Like, they're really busy.
No, and it takes ages to make a decision. It's not like you make a decision and it's like, oh, cool, I see this guy, it was fine. They can take 2-3 months to make a decision. Yeah. So if you're making 250 investments,
it's
how is it even
bonkers?
Possible?
And the thing that's crazy is up until recently in LA, it was just Dave and Eric. David Seymour and Eric Manlunas. So I knew Eric for a long time. And the way I joined them was I was doing all the 805 stuff. And Eric had sent over the years, we'd gone back and forth, and I kind of joked with them, and we talked about very high level working together, but it wasn't ever serious. And one day, I don't know, a year ago or something, I sent some message I responded to one of their newsletters talking about all of their deals, and I responded to Eric, and I said, hey man, we really got to figure something out because you need to spend more time in the 805. This company, this company, this company have all had these exits. And in the 805, north of LA, basically from like Calabasas to like past Santa Barbara, I explained them, we have a disproportionate amount of activity and exits in this area compared to LA. And most companies, when you see on TechCrunch, that LA-based company, lynda.com or whatever, they're based in Carpinteria. That's like by Santa Barbara. They're in the middle of nowhere up there. Like, you know about it because maybe you went to the candy shop in that town or because you went camping at the beach. That's the only reason why people know Carpinteria in Southern California until, now with a few good companies. So I joked with him and I responded, and one of the companies I listed was one of their portfolio companies. And he responded, I don't remember the exact words, but his response was like, we know we were investors in Mind Body, you idiot, or something like that. Yeah. And another reason why I like them because they can, because Eric is like that. But they're real. But then we did start working together, but almost immediately. So I'll give you a little background of Wavemaker. Based in LA,
companies are amazing,
in Singapore.
Like Clutter. I actually didn't realize that Wavemaker. Sorry, just before you do that, that Wavemaker had invested in Amplify as well.
Yeah, so Wavemaker invests in a few.
You're a
funds.
seed fund investing in other seed funds.
So investors in Amplify, investors in 500 startups, and it's you have to. Well, one, they're Amplify is so smart. Invested in, went through Amplify. I love them. We actually more recently. Brought Chris Bjornerud as a partner at Amplify. He was one of the guys running Amplify. Yeah. Richard Wolpert, who's one of the founders of Amplify, is a good friend of mine. He lives up in the 805, and we grab coffee together sometimes. He's like one of my favorite people in the world, Richard. Yeah. And so I was excited that So, but because of them investing in Amplify, Amplify made a direct introduction to Wavemaker when I had my company going through Amplify. And so that's how I met them. So Amplify, I could thank for that, but now Wavemaker could thank Amplify for a lot of those companies. Clutter is an Amplify company.
And that's what's really interesting about Wavemaker is almost like a spider's web. So you take the individual players who are a part of it, like Tim Draper, top.
Yeah, Tim Draper. So the
one,
background
two, three most influential
Tim Draper
people in the world.
Yeah, Tim is an investor in a lot of the Wavemaker funds, and we're a part of the Draper Venture Network. So the Draper Venture Network is sort of this network of funds around the world that Tim Draper's involved with. And then a couple times a year, they have these sort of like super private high-end Draper Venture Network summits where everyone shares deals. Wow. And there's full-time employees of the Draper Venture Network who just help syndicate the deals across the network.
Crazy.
So, there's a bunch all around the world. They're all really smart, amazing people. I always was invited to the Draper Network.
It's like a Freemasons, but without funny handshakes, right?
We have funny handshakes too, but no, I'm just kidding. But like, no, it is. It's like this sort of like not secret society where it's all of these guys who are in. It's just how venture works in general, right? Like the way it started, the Draper Venture Network worked. If you remember, just like a few years ago, a lot of funds were like there was in town here. There was DFJ Frontier, of course, right? Yeah. And there was DFJ Gotham. There was DFJ, all these DFJ, and then another name. And DFJ was Draper Fisher Jurvetson. That was the fund that Tim Draper was the founder of up in Silicon Valley, and he sort of thought, hey, at a certain point, once the internet became the internet, we should sort of not franchise out, but sort of distribute and network up all of these smart investors around the world to be a part of our network so that – because he was one of the first people to fully understand that like 3 smart people in Malaysia or Indonesia or China or Australia could start just as big of an exciting company as 3 smart people in Silicon Valley. You didn't have to be there anymore because of the internet. Yeah. So he actually sort of distributed VC and got it all around the map. And so that's what that is now. And also the other, it's so interesting because
a lot of the time when we're going through the podcast and startups come back to me and say, "Oh, this is great. I didn't realize it was so accessible to get through to people." And I think what everybody doesn't realize is that there's a circle which you should deserve to get into. And sometimes you deserve to get into it by doing what you did back in the day when you got into Amplify, which was an accelerator. You do really well. You get to know the owner of Amplify. The owner of Amplify introduces you to other people. And then as people are calling around looking for the best people, you become the best people. As people are looking for the best companies, you become the best company. So it's about, at early stage startup, making sure we're incredibly visible, but on top of that, incredibly good. We hit our milestones, we smash our milestones. We don't worry about people saying no because it's a progression, right?
Yeah, there's two sides to it. There's I think Jeff Solomon, he at Amplify had like a term called mentor whiplash or something like that, where like Brian gives you an idea and you love it and you go with it, and then the next person you meet 2 days later goes, I fucking hate that idea. That's a stupid idea. And you go like, well, that guy might be an investor in my company. I'm going to go do that now. And then every day you completely switch focus and you never get shit done.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of that part of it where you have to sort of have conviction and go. But my favorite thing is what you touched down with the killing these milestones.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at like, there's some people you sit down in a meeting with. It turns me off, but it works with a lot of people where you sit down in the meeting, they're instantly like selling, right? They're instantly like, okay, Brian, we came here today to discuss Invested In. I'd love to tell you about our crowdfunding platform and how Expert Dojo could launch it and this and then that.
Yeah.
And like,
kind of turns me off too.
That's one kind of salesperson, right?
Yeah.
And they are on point. They're good at their job. And they fit a certain criteria that's wonderful. But I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
I will sit with you for an hour, and then the last 4 minutes of our hour, or the 4 minutes past our hour, I'll be like, oh, Brian, we didn't even talk about Invested In. You know what? I'll send you the details. You understood it. That's why we took the meeting. But like, if it's something you're interested in, we'll figure it out together. Just let me know what's up or whatever. Like, it's a more of a relationship game, and it might be the second or third one, but for me, that's how it worked. And maybe there's a difference between sort of really high-end enterprise sales and then transactional type of stuff.
Because we get into the moment.
Yeah.
It's like me. I have a list of about 6 or 7 questions that I'm supposed to ask you within the first 5 minutes or so, right? I haven't even got to them yet because I just get into the conversation. Yeah. And why break something beautiful when we have them? I do need to ask you, though. Let me ask you first.
Yeah.
So, Wavemaker. Types of deals that you love, because you got everything. You got Surfair, you got all kinds of stuff.
So what I'll sort of preface it between we are both this person, so we're never going to actually stick to anything.
Which is wonderful. You like amazing companies.
Well, yeah, but what I never even got to the point that I joined Wavemaker, and then within a couple months, Dave and I were hanging out at a lot of crypto events, and I actually joined full time from being a venture partner at Wavemaker to being full time now at a crypto fund that we launched together called Wavemaker Genesis. So it's technically a separate fund.
So exciting.
So the Wavemaker Partners, if you hit me up about deals that fit into that, I'll actually connect you with Chris and Eric. But what Wavemaker Partners does is invest in early stage companies. Try to be focused B2B. It really varies. We can write a $100,000 check and we could write a $3 million check.
Wow.
Usually we come in very early and we write the smaller checks.
Yeah.
And we don't lead around or anything like that. And we use that as sort of a tracker. And then when the company grows, if you grow, you raise more money, then we usually participate more.
Beautiful.
And that's sort of the way we do it. Being now, even with our team grown, we're only at 4 or 5 people in the office at any given point in time. So we can't usually lead around. So we usually have a bunch of investors that we trust, like Amplify. I know some of our partners are also LPs personally on some of LA's more well-known funds as well. So when they invest in a deal, we might find out about it and participate as well.
Yeah.
But we absolutely love early stage software mostly B2B, but we still do some other stuff and are very unique to different things that we do.
What's the biggest check you'll do? A couple of million?
I know that Wavemaker's done, $3-4 million checks, but it's what happens is on the bigger rounds and stuff, usually what we'll do is we might write a check and then syndicate it amongst our LPs or other investors that we know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can get up to sort of 3 million. That's not the norm though. It is you don't be the most active seed fund by making big checks, because those are the ones you have to spend the most time on.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of smaller checks.
Yeah.
And then now I'm full-time on Wavemaker Genesis, so David Seamer, a guy named Scott Walker, who's really big in the crypto space, and I are so far the only full-time people on the fund. And we're looking at doing that early stage model in the crypto space.
Would you look at an exchange?
Absolutely. Exchanges are like some of the best businesses in crypto.
I have an exchange, Xcoins. They're doing about $1 million a year right now. Not acting as an exchange. For those of you who can't see me, I have my fingers in little inverted commas. But they are doing transactions between Bitcoin and fiat, and they're doing about $1 million a year. They make like $100,000 a month in profits.
It's
awesome.
It's crazy how it's crazy how exchanges are printing money. I think that over time the fees will go down significantly, and one of the exchanges. So this is my theory with the exchanges. You look at NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange, all these things. They have these underlying technology layers that allow Schwab and Fidelity and all those people to participate. Fidelity doesn't have to have their own exchange to allow you to buy Amazon stock on Fidelity. They use the same technology that everyone else uses, and you participate. I think that as time goes by, one of the bigger exchanges will have to win in the crypto space and create that API and that underlying layer that all the rest of them will use.
Yeah, and there'll be a bunch more that will come out there. So then what about, if I was to throw another startup at you, early stage startup, do logistical, they transport goods in exactly the same way that Amazon does, but just 23 hours quicker. Like that. Called Shipsy, awesome company, run by an amazing female founder. They're going through a round right now. They've raised about 400 of $1 million that they're doing, and they're building out an infrastructural network which is using Postmates and using Uber to get packages sent around town. Instant economy, instant money, something like that.
Absolutely. That's actually the perfect timing for us to make a decision, is when we meet a lot of these companies way before they do this, but we like to work quickly. And if we can talk to some of the investors that maybe led the round and we understand why they invested, and then also just check out the company. I think that one of the things that got me really excited when I first met Eric, not that when I first met him, but when we first discussed working together, he asked me something along the lines like, how much does somebody else's decision play into what you're doing? And I gave some like political BS answer. I was like, well, if I really trust the person and there's certain people and and the thing that I trust, if they told me that this is a good deal, then I'll take it more seriously. And I gave some kind of BS answer. And Eric is like, okay, we're okay with going against the grain, where like, if, you really like the person and you think that there's something there and we're early enough on and it makes sense, then we'll participate, even if other people tell us we're stupid for doing it. Like, we're okay with being against the grain. And he used the word against the grain like 7 times. Yeah. And it stuck with me, one, because I like that. And then 2, it's my favorite Bad Religion album of all time. It's called Against the Grain. And so I could have been wearing an Against the Grain t-shirt at the time. I don't remember.
But it's also why they are one of the most successful funds in the United States, if not the world. Yeah. I mean, I know I looked at some numbers earlier on today, and they outperformed pretty much all markets last year based on investments gone through. Yes or no?
Yeah, I don't know exactly which stuff is public or not, but there is sort of like upper quartile benchmarks in venture capital, where if you look at like just data that government and Kauffman and all these different foundations put out there, we're always in that, like the top 90% of everyone.
Okay, questions for you. I'm going to rapid fire. So, a must-know for entrepreneurs looking to defeat failure. All of your years of experience, one sentence, what have you got?
Keep moving.
Yeah.
Just don't stop. I mean, there's momentum going forward, and then you wanted me to be super short, but it's really 2 things. It's to always move forward, and to always update people on where you were. So like I always have that conversation the first time I meet an investor where I barely ever touch on the business. I just get to know them. I want them to like me. I want to like them. I'm building relationships. And then I instantly put that person on my list as a potential investor if I met them as a potential investor.
Yeah.
And then I start sending them updates.
Yeah.
And if I don't have an update every couple of weeks, I'll create one.
Yeah.
I will literally,
That's
like,
great
we have to
advice
come
because
up.
people don't do it.
Well-
They say, "Oh, you said no to me. I'm going to move on." No, you dummy. Like, what do you think? You're going to meet the love of your life on the first date, and if it's not perfect on the first date, you're just going to move on.
Well,
this
so
is a relationship.
When
you have to
when I
build.
raised my round for Invested In, I did two things by mistake that were the best things that ever happened.
How much did
There
you
was-
raise? At the time?
When we raised at the time, I think it was like 880 or 830K, something like that.
Nice.
But we set out to raise 500K. And the reason it worked this way is one, a bunch of early stage investors understand that the biggest problem with startups, they don't raise enough money. It's one of the reasons why some startups go out of business, right? So you don't raise enough money if you fit into that mold. Sometimes raising money is not the right approach, but that's a totally different subject. But that was a thing. And we did something, we had a convertible note that on a certain date gave people a lower discount if they came in after that date.
Yeah.
And coming up to that date, we barely raised shit. We were super scared. We only had like 50K committed and that date was coming.
Wow.
And we were so scared all the investors we were talking to are going to look at that as a signal. Like if they can't even get the money at a bigger
They're
discount,
doomed.
like who's going to invest? But what happened was I picked the last day of a month.
Yeah.
And it happened to be on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think about it. I just picked the last day of the month as that deadline. And I sent a bunch of emails out like the Wednesday before that or like the Monday, Tuesday before that, and barely crickets. But like the Friday I started getting a bunch of emails saying, "Oh my God, your discount is about to end. What's going on?" And start getting messages. And we ended up closing like 300K on the Saturday. I was like supposed to do something with the family. I like told my wife, "I'm so sorry." I closed the door of the office at home. This was when we only had one kid, so we still had an office.
God bless you. You had more. God bless you.
And we literally, I had one investor in San Francisco I never met before, got introduced to that Friday.
Yeah.
That Saturday, I had a phone call with him in the morning. He said he's going to go out to breakfast with his family, and he'll call me afterwards to let me know his decision, and he was in.
Yeah.
And it was like an hour-long phone call because of an introduction to somebody else, someone who I'd never met before, ever. And then we ended up
communication.
And what happened was that deadline is what created a bunch of people to that were on the fence to come in. And so when I realized the deadline happened, I finally got like a month later where we thought we were done at 500K. And I was like, okay, I know at this point we're 100% 500. We had like $475,000 in, and I knew one guy was 99% in. So I basically sent an email out to every investor we had talked to up until that point, people who I'd updated and communicated with every couple weeks and told them what we were doing and given them, our next goal is to do this. And then 2 weeks later, we hit the goal. Even though I already knew that goal was going to be, but you do that, right? You play this game. They understand that there's forward momentum, right? And I sent an email out saying, on Friday, our round is closed. We hit our 500K. We were willing to raise up to I said we're willing to let in a few more of our friends that we've already had relationships with, that we've already met with and we love. And Brian, I love you. If you'd like to be in, I'll make sure it's still open for you, but I have to know by Friday.
Yeah, you were consistent with the urgency.
And I did set it up like a mail merge. I sent everyone the same message, but they thought it was only going to them.
Yeah.
And literally that week, we went from 475 to 880.
Beautiful.
And it was and a few of the people were people that said no to us.
Yeah.
But they went, you know what? You're this, you're that. I love the way you're working. And so that's the biggest thing is you keep people updated. And by mistake, we created that urgency the first time. So I was like, hey, it worked the first time. I'm going to do it again the second time. And having those deadlines and that urgency is important. But it can come back and bite you in the butt if you don't have the full confidence.
No, it's beautiful.
It's going to work.
Like what I'm hearing is don't stress on the moments. Focus on the timeline. So the moments of somebody saying yes or no, like it will happen. You see, somebody said to me the other day, hey, I got to kiss 100 frogs to try and get one person to say yeah. Yeah, but they're just 100 individual moments. Like we don't want to focus on those moments. We want to focus on what does the timeline look like with the individual frogs? Because it may be today, it's a total no because it's right for them to be no today.
Yeah, and
but in 6 months' time, it's different.
And it takes 10 times longer to get your first investor than it does your second investor, then your third investor, then your fourth investor. Like it does snowball. And once you start building that group, because once you can basically send an email to an investor and say, hey, we just closed, a third of our round. If you'd like to be introduced to any of the other investors, I'd love to connect you with them so they could tell you why they invested.
Yeah.
We had one of our investors who had like a sort of pledge fund thing where he actually had like a bunch of investors, and every time he did a deal, he would send them a mass email with like a 2 or 3 page document about that company. And he would pool a few more of their investments and make his investment bigger.
Because investors want you to get more investors because their investment only becomes more valuable as you close your rounds.
Yeah. So what he did was he created this document. And I went to him and I was like, I heard from one of the other investors you put together this great report about our company. Would you be willing to share that with other investors, or can you send it to me and I'll share it with other investors? And he said, I'll give it to you only if my logo is at the top, my information is there, and you like CC me on the email or something like that. And I went, done. And when I first got the document, he had already decided to invest, but there was like all of the bad parts about our company in that document too. He was very like honest with his investors, like, hey, here's the things I don't like about Alon. Here's the things I don't like about the company. And he had that in there. And for like a split second, I was a little bit offended, but like I got over it very quickly because it was the best sales tool we ever had. Yeah. It was somebody else talking about why they gave us their money. Yeah. And so
by the way, if you're not taking notes listening to this, you're nuts. This is how you get investment. Hey, by the way, just on top of this, are there skills that you would allocate to great founders of startups, or some of the skills that you had? Maybe some of the skills that you and I don't have. But if you were going to look at that startup either for investment or for success, what would the top like 4 or 5 skills be?
So I think the number one is sales. Because you're selling when you sell to investors. You're selling when you get new employees at a startup. You can't afford to pay them as much as Google and Facebook is paying them. But you want the same people.
So true.
You can't. I'm
grateful to our team every day. Every day. If I don't tell you I love you, I love you.
I literally...
You ain't here for the money. You're here for the love.
Well, I told my partner at one point, he would find an engineer he liked. And then the thing was, when he decided to, we would take them out to lunch. And make
McDonald's,
that offer that afternoon, or coffee or something. And I clearly remember sitting at Starbucks in Santa Monica with people who we wanted desperately to join our company, but I had to convince, you're going to get paid 30-40% less working for us than anywhere else. So I had to convince them that our startup's equity was going to be worth a shit ton of money, but I also had to just convince them like, this is awesome and you're going to be here, and I'd buy lunch for them every day because that amount of money was nothing compared to how much we were saving by getting them. But I told my partner at one point, I said, I sell harder to these potential employees than I ever did to any investor or any of our customers.
Because we need them more.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
with the investors' money, we can do fine if we get plenty of investors' money through, or if we don't get money through. But actually, if our employees are bad and don't work, don't turn up, or don't care, we fail. No matter how much investor money we have, we fail. It's over.
Yeah, and it's my partner and I, we're passionate about this, so working around the clock makes sense. So how do we find people that are just as passionate or get them as passionate? Sales. So wait, go back to your question. Sales. The next thing is something I learned. I worked at Amazon back in the day, and when I first started there, they had this thing called it was some kind of corporate term. It's called like bar raisers or something like that. I don't even remember what it's called, but they said something that stuck with me. Was like, and at the time I didn't really get it. It was, when you hire somebody to join your team, they should be better at what you're hiring them for than you are at it.
Mate, I was just going to say the same. I was going to say my resolution this year is to surround myself with unbelievably talented and brilliant people. I will not hang around with mediocre people. And I don't mean like to go to a bar, have a drink, or be friends with. I mean, they're my friends. I'm talking about in business. My bar is on exceptional people and surrounding myself with those people. So it's amazing you say this, because this was just the year it hit me. I'm like, no more. Like, just great people.
So at the time, I was like, no managers in a big corporate environment are going to hire people that threaten their jobs. But in a culture where if Brian brought you in and Brian thought you were the best at this particular thing and you were the best and you're better than Brian at it, Brian gets credit for that too. Because Brian is what brought this to the table, right? And it brings everybody up and it raises everybody's level and it makes you smart. So the thing, like, I suck at certain things. Like, I'm really bad at keeping certain things organized and doing things in, the way I speak and our ADD and talking and every, which direction this conversation, that shit's going on in my brain at all times. So I understand that I have to set myself reminders in my phone. I have to have tons of Google Sheets where I'm tracking everything, right? And I need that. And I've learned how to like kind of compensate with technology. But hiring people on the team that can kind of round us out in that way was really, really important. And so in my head, it's the hiring the people and the selling that are the most important thing in a startup. And I remember we had somebody named Ilya that was a little brother of a friend who was going to go to like UCLA or something, but had like 3 months before school started, who like wanted an unpaid internship. I think his brother wanted him to get out of the house. Like, really, that was the thing. And when we hired Ilya to do, like, basically come into the office for a week when I was going to be out of town and just, like, help with keeping shit organized while, like, we brought on a new customer or something, we instantly realized, like, this guy is the most valuable person on our team. We brought him full time, and by the time we were done, he was basically our COO. Like, he went from intern to COO in, like, a year, and he basically ran all ops on everything we did. And he was like my assistant salesman. He was everything.
Our intern that we brought in from Pepperdine 6 months ago is now our head of product and the greatest user experience person. Like, we would be dead without her. She runs everything. We call her B Money. We call her B Money because everything she touches is B Money, right?
I love it.
It's true. Hire. Don't be caught up with what school they went to, whether they did an MBA. Not in our world. No. Our world is a cage fighter world. Be caught up with having great people around you, amazing people who can surpass where you are. Okay, final couple of things.
Okay.
I want to finish up with just 2 areas if we can. Number one, for anyone who's trying to get to Wavemaker, am I right in saying, yes, approach direct, yes, you can go in, yes, you can send emails, but actually a really smart way in is find someone who's co-invested with Wavemaker in the past, get that person as your best friend stroke investor, and have them make an introduction, and you're going to have a way better chance of closing something.
Totally. So there's the introductions from a warm lead is always the best, always taking the most seriously. Then it's show up to events like at Expert Dojo, hang out with me a couple times. I'm terrible. We meet thousands of people all the time. So I'm not going to meet you one time and then you send me an email a month later and go like, hey, it's Brian. Don't you remember me from that?
No.
Maybe I might remember certain parts of the conversation, but once we meet each other 2 or 3 times, come to Expert Dojo, come to 805 events, come to the summit, and we'll start to get to know each other and build a relationship, and then it's much better. That's the best way to do it. But of course, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll be updated at every event I'm gonna be at. You could follow me on Twitter, and we'll there's that's the best way to do it. Just immerse yourself in the startup community, and you'll start getting these introductions.
And so people can go to the conference and just get to know you generally. How can they contact you?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. You will start getting my emails, or go to my website, which I need to update, and sign up for my newsletter. And you'll get my newsletters. You'll know where I am, and you'll also get my contact info, because the first time I send an email, you'll get my personal email address. Beautiful. I don't hide that stuff. And I'll be totally honest that I'm really crappy at being timely on emails, and sometimes stuff will fall between the cracks. So follow up. Don't be shy about it. And then when we see each other at events, you'll have a leg up on me because I'll remember your name at that point, and then I'll feel like an asshole that I didn't respond, and then you'll get extra love.
Yeah, right. Hey, listen, man, I just want to say, listen, you're a great friend of mine. You're a great friend of the startup community. Wavemaker, I don't think they get anywhere near the shout outs for the great things they do. They just quietly go. You just quietly go inside Wavemaker and do these deals, help these startups, help these companies become great. So I just want to give a big shout out for Wavemaker and say, listen, thanks from the startup community. Thanks for everything you guys do. Thanks for sticking by the most dangerous and difficult space to make a call on a startup, but by far the most important space to help those startups become great. You guys rock.
Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you do. Because
you're
the glue that holds it all together. No, if we were at like a conference, I would turn around and be like, well, give it up for Brian because he's actually the one getting shit done and literally the glue holding the whole community together. And that's, at the end of the day, way more important than any of the individual parts.
Screw you. Let's hope. All right, we're done. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. If you know any other entrepreneur equally ambitious as you, then share this podcast by paying it forward to other entrepreneurs who are building your own army. Now, as always, our website, expertdojo.com, is packed with information to help you grow your business, find investment, and train for victory. We also walk our talk and invest in startups every year in our accelerator here in Silicon Beach. You can always reach out to me at brian@expertdojo.com, and I look forward to being back here again at our regular time next Tuesday, 10 a.m. with another of the world's top investors, helping you win the war against startup failure.